What's up, Renegade Nation? Before we begin the video, I want to give a shout out to our most recent Patreon supporters and YouTube members. Spoilers, Mario Sith, Iris Ohm, Christopher Oldacker Jr., Reed Rutter, Riftengard, James Moyner, Ace Dimmadome, Hayoka, E.E. Trueborn, Nat, Priya Dali, Noah Barnhart, Nathan Kirkham, Bat Out of Hell, Gabriel Sabarit, Daniel Metcalf, Marshall Taylor, Toxie, Ram Femboy, The Jester, Dano25655, Marvoius, Big Head Bus, Model CHP-3Y, Jessica Lacasse, Darius, Kian Boffy Nielsen, Sophie Leske, Quia Butler, Slindecker, Jur, Joseph Stalin, Fresh 2000, Tin Man 1996, Elijah Moffat, Nightwolf 99, Venture Svarth, Ethan Bryan. And as always, I would like to give a shout out to our executive producers, The Gimster 101, Bevan Brummett, and Vincenzo. Thank you all very much for your support. If you wish to become a YouTube member, feel free to click the join button, which is down by the subscribe button down below. And if you wish to become a Patreon supporter, feel free to click the link in the description to find out more. We'll see you there. Oh, I got a new tool. Wait, is this a... Oh my gosh, dude, I can melt through metal now. Yay! Any upgrades available? Hello, hello. You know what? I got a full minute of blowtorch.
I was under the impression that this video was going to be about actual Demakes, like where they took games that were modern games and made like retro, like inspired versions on them, like they did with like like they made screenshots but didn't actually do it as a full game, but they did a Bloodborne thing where it looked like it was on PS1. I thought that's what he was going to be talking about.
I think maybe that, and also I don't know what he's going to talk about. I know Scott the Waz covers a various amount of topics, and by the way, I know a lot of you out there want us to watch his 200th episode, Forever Borderline Forever. It's an hour and 3 minutes. We only have so much time, guys. If we are going to watch it, it's going to be an event. Jesus Christ.
Maybe on a live stream one day if we're bored enough.
Yes, maybe so. Maybe we'll live stream a reaction to it.
We're hardly ever that bored though, because we got shit to do.
So. Yeah, we got a lot of shit to do. I mean, we got a bunch of projects in the side pocket. Nick wants to get back to singing.
Still working on getting our house completely unpacked.
Yeah, which we've got. You know, Nick's got his music project, which he wants to get back to as soon as he's able to recover from his oral surgeries. And then, of course, we have our music stuff over here that I want to do music. I want to work music projects with Jacob and Kathan, and also I'm doing a film project with Jacob right now as well. We're trying to stay busy, guys. We're trying to do different things because as much as I like doing reactions, I always want to do more. I always want to do something else. And I love doing this. I love being here with all of you and sharing these experiences with you. But I got that artistic itch, and I'm almost 33 years old. And I fucking hate that that's a reality. But here we go. This is Scott the Waz, Demakes. Here we go.
Hey y'all, Scott here.
Hi, Scott.
Events occurring in the past. What would it be like to live in an era prior to this very moment? I wonder what I'm going to say in 5 minutes. What the hell is this? Why is it good? We need to go a hint closer to utter dog shit. I said a hint. The year is 1987. This is what we call a video game. That was a short game of 20 questions. At the time, things could only go up graphically. They were trying all kinds of 3D styles. Some games you could hear crystal clear sound in with voice acting, and other games were movies you could slightly interact with. The future was looking bright. Imagine what video games will look like 30 years from now. Holy f***, it's wider! What's the main driving force behind new video game consoles? Better graphics. I'll let you shoot me in the foot if you look nice. We all want our video games to look better each and every generation.
Death Stranding.
But sometimes it's fun not to care. The graphical style of older games were simpler, no doubt, but there was a certain magic to it. That old school Atari 2600 look. It's crude, it's not great, but there's something to be said about making the simplest of art understandable to the player, making it obvious to them that these are aliens in 4 pixels or less. It's oddly beautiful. Let the record show, I'm also legally blind. But when we move into the 8-bit and 16-bit eras, these are much easier to find worth in. A similar style of making the most out of limitations, but this feels more like actual art somebody drew that was then squished into a cartridge. 16-bit art is so much better too. This was taking pixel art and adding so many more colors and details in the music of this era.
Hey!
God, maybe a bunch of bleeps and bloops.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy VI.
In such catchy and mesmerizing ways. Again, it's so cool how they would make something so beautiful out of something so limited. And due to how simple things were, it was easier to immediately understand
Kirby?
what make these games tick. Modern games are so full of cutscenes and 3D eye candy that it can sometimes distract you from the core of the game, which might not be that great. Because of this, the style of older games has never really died out, not only because less powerful handheld systems
Wait a
kept
second.
2D
Did he
pixelated
just
jargon
diss Death
alive,
Stranding?
while home consoles tried shoving
I don't think so. I don't
I
think.
know a lot of people did, but
I don't think he's trying to. I think he's.
Cutscenes and 3D eye candy that it can sometimes distract you from the core of the game, which might not be that great. Because of this,
The core. I think he's saying it's distracting you from the core game, which may not be that great. I don't think Scott. I think Scott said he wasn't a fan really of Death Stranding's like main story. Not that he thinks that the game itself was bad, but he just wasn't a fan of the main story.
I love the story.
the style of older games has never really died out, not only because less powerful handheld systems kept 2D pixelated jargon alive while the home consoles tried shoving polygons down our throat, but because people legitimately like these art styles, this music, these simpler, more get-to-the-chase type games. It doesn't just remind people who peaked in high school of better times, some just like this kind of stuff. The problem is, most think older games look outdated. And 99% of the time, they would be correct. So to get modern gamers to play the classics, you might just have to remake them, giving them new visuals with all kinds of crazy effects, a fully orchestrated soundtrack, and even more content. But, like I said, many still value this older style of game, while some want these older games to be recreated for the modern age. What if we took this modern thing and tried to recreate it using this rock? This is a demake, remaking a game on worse and or older hardware, possibly generations older, or it's just made in the style of older titles.
See, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, I thought he was going to talk about how remakes can often be so bad that they're considered demakes.
How a modern game works when it's met with the limitations of living in 1994. It doesn't. Most demakes are fan-made. Makes sense. If Nintendo isn't going to put Smash Brothers on a Game Boy, damn it, I'm gonna. One of the most famous examples of this is Halo 2600, a demake of Halo for the Atari 2600. Now, to be fair, this is a more completely different game in comparison to straight-up playing Halo on Atari. How would you even begin to port these graphics over? Well, we can do the color green. No, this is turning the concept of Halo's story, characters, and some of the gameplay and trying to make it work as an old-school Atari game. It's pretty neat to think about how you recontextualize things that have only ever been seen in first-person 3D into a 2D sprite, and not just any 2D sprite, a bad one. However, I think what made this game truly famous in the demake realm was the fact it was made by one Ed Fries. He was actually the vice president of Microsoft's game publishing division up until 2004, so can you really consider this a fan-made demake when it was made by a Microsoft employee who worked with the Halo series? Well, this is far from official. Fries released this in 2010, 6 years after he left Microsoft, and even if he was still working at Microsoft when he made this, it was just a hobby project to attempt to make a Halo game for the Atari 2600. But it's more official than pretty much any other unofficial demakes, so you gotta give it credit. I think the Atari demakes are pretty interesting because I feel like you can make most games conceptually work on an NES or SNES with little issue. I mean, they would look and play wildly different, but I could fully imagine demakes of The Last of Us and Dark Souls on those platforms. These consoles can produce high-quality gameplay and stories. Atari is a different beast. You pretty much have to remake a game and turn it into a high-score kind of deal. But fans have shown loads of talent by producing demakes of Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. Mario is pretty impressively close. Zelda has more in common with a loading screen, but these are fan creations, the video game false prophet. What about official demakes? Well, they aren't the most common, but when they happen, they really double dragon on Atari 2600. Gesundheit. You truly see the power of the demake with Atari. I mean, this thing runs on pencil lead. How are you gonna make Donkey Kong Jr. work on Atari? You don't. Now, Atari seems to be the furthest we can go back in terms of demaking, but how much simpler can we get? It's dangerous to ask me words. So we have Double Dragon on Atari or Double Dragon the LCD handheld game. Pick your poison.
God,
I feel that
those
many would
games are
disagree with the
fucking
notion that these are
awful.
demakes, but if you consider Halo
Do what?
Those kind of games are fucking awful.
Yeah, did not like them.
It's like, my mom got me a couple of those because I was just like, it's like a handheld
cheap
video
alternative to
game, and then I
Real
was
Man's
vastly
handheld.
disappointed
Tiger
with how it
Electronics
actually
sells-
worked.
You're wrong, Mom. It's not like a new video game. It's not a new video game at all.
3D games took
It's
the
a
full name
demake.
and branding of arcade and console games and made calculators out of them. These often are nowhere near replacements for the actual things, rather reinterpretations of the classics that can be displayed in a sticky notes worth of screen real estate. And damn it if that isn't a demake. The Tiger games are pretty gross. They take the bare minimum concept of these games and make this a high score based, overly simplistic romp that's just an endurance test. Hey, see how long you can use your thumbs. Nintendo had their own LCD games with the Game & Watch brand, in which they themselves
that
converted their
one
games over to.
I actually
These,
had, and it was
however,
not
are
as
much
bad.
more
Like, it
well
was kind of
designed.
decent.
They're still simplistic.
Well, in truth, that's I think the changing it up like that works better because there's a point of progression that it's all on one screen.
Yeah.
Whereas Double
The cool
Dragon,
thing
you
about-
have to progress through the level.
The cool thing about that is, like, there's a lot more screen and therefore a lot more little animation points for it, as opposed to, like, the sticky note size screen, you know? So.
Yeah.
But there's more of an addictive challenge to these compared to what I found in a morgue. And when the game they were demaking for Game & Watch was too complicated for the LCD screens, they would make something entirely new for them, like with Super Mario Bros. And Zelda. The LCD demake is probably as low as we can go, unless you count charades. So, instead of pathetic, let's try for fucking bizarre, my new store. Sega hit it big with the Sega Genesis here in North America. With their previous console, the Sega Master System, look at it. Does it look like it would do well here?
Ugh.
Maybe Brazil. The Master System was a long-lasting success in Europe and Brazil. They just loved grid paper and failure. While the console ended in 1992 here in the States, it lived on for years longer in other regions, especially in Brazil, where it has yet to be officially discontinued. Maybe they just forgot. But because of its success, demakes of popular Sega Genesis games were common for the platform. Sonic came over, though more so in specially designed games for the Master System. Streets of Rage, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, because good versions of those games weren't good enough. But the demake I want to focus on here is Street Fighter 2. Yeah, Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Master System.
Still funny to me that Michael Jackson's Moonwalker is a thing that exists.
Oh.
That hits the spot.
Oh.
Honestly, for a version of Street Fighter 2 on an 8-bit console, it's pretty good. I mean, character moves are missing, so it's not like a full-fledged port. It's not like this is the full Street Fighter 2 experience, just a little worse. Yeah, this banana was run over by my cart, but it's still a full experience. Nah, this simply does the job for Master System owners who wanted Street Fighter 2 and not much else. Graphically, I think this looks pretty damn good. Audially, I too enjoy making soundtracks with elevators. For what it's worth, Street Fighter 2 on Master System is fascinating. It only released in Brazil in 1997.
I hate the fact that there's like so many animations missing.
1997.
It looks horrible. To me.
Oh. Ugh.
What?
Because they were
just the thought of, like, they had to take stuff out. They had to repurpose and redo everything for the Master System in Brazil. I mean, again, dude, just when there was so much better tech available.
duped into thinking this was a Sega Genesis version of the game. The developer then revealed they were playing on the Master System, and they said, "Wow, this fucking stunk for the Genesis, but for the Master System, this could be worse." It was approved. I'd rather play this than the Game Boy version, which that's only a remake. The portable variant of the game was almost always lesser in every way.
Honestly, that looks a little
just
bit
like
better
Street
than the
Fighter on
Master System version to
it
me.
could be worse. I think many Game Boy remakes are fairly impressive. I mean, DuckTales on this thing is damn close to DuckTales How God Intended it. Developers had to choose whether to make a version of the game designed with the Game Boy in mind, or just try to cram funny shit in the car. It's a balancing act. Would it really be easier to make a Lion King game for the NES, or just take the SNES game and downgrade the hell out of it? This looks unnatural. Like, I feel like if I would play this as a kid, I would still think to myself, this feels like a downgraded version of something that already exists. I mean, designing a game from scratch for a system is a lot of work, but it's also really hard to get the Lion King on SNES to run on the NES. You know the old saying. The NES got a few remakes. I'd consider Mighty Final Fight to be one of these. This is a Final Fight game made exclusively for the NES. It's a retelling of the first game's story, so I would consider this a remake. Take that, Senate. However, everything else is really this game's own thing. If you consider Final Fantasy VII Remake to be a remake, give Mighty Final Fight a chance. This is definitely more of a spoof on the original. They made all the characters children and built it entirely for the NES. It was definitely meant to give NES owners a Final Fight experience while also making sure it could stand on its own, so they made it a joke. I'm a proud NES owner. Mighty Final Fight is its own thing and isn't bogged down by the limitations of the console it's on. Rather, Capcom used the limitations to their advantage while creating this thing. This is how you do a remake, and it might not even qualify as one. That's why we go back to the Game Boy line with Game Boy Color and Advance remakes. Finally, I can play Grand Theft Auto portably.
Yeah.
About
I
that.
never said I was happy with my life. For some reason, developers constantly tried to take these big console experiences and shove them on the GBC. Resident Evil was being worked on, and while it was cancelled, looking at what was accomplished, it's impressive and concerning. Think about how advanced society would be if we didn't spend so much time porting Resident Evil to Game Boy. I mean, this looks like straight up Resident Evil, but what ended up releasing was Resident Evil Gaiden, something more original for the system. They still tried to make it as full-fledged of an RE game as it could be, including this rhythm game combat mechanic to incorporate first-person shooting, which is honestly pretty clever. And of course, GTA 2. I'm sure not many people knew this was a thing, on top of the fact the first game is on here as well. In fact, that worked on the original Game Boy. These are like the coolest items at an antique mall. Absolutely jaw-dropping, but you couldn't pay me to lick them. These are really not great versions, but just the fact they even resemble a Grand Theft Auto game, I think is enough. Were you really expecting to pop GTA 2 into your Game Boy Color and be enthralled? No, this game was created with the intent of people saying Grand Theft Auto on Game Boy Color and nothing more.
Well, I mean, even the original Grand Theft Auto kind of looked like that, though. It was not.
It was.
It's not very good.
The top-down perspective, it wasn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
The first Grand Theft Auto with the top-down perspective was good on PlayStation, but then 2 and I think London 1969, I think was the other one, were not up to snuff, and then they completely changed up their way of doing it with 3.
Yeah. 3 is where it kind of like jumped into the mainstream, and everybody kind of was like, "Oh, this is amazing,
up, dude." I remember when I saw a commercial for it, and I was like, because it had the operatic music and the cars jumping through the air, and then you had like this interesting story going on. It's like, I got the inside track that my guy's a rat. We gotta shut him up permanently.
So that was one of the first M-rated games I remember having to try to convince my mom, being like, "I'm not gonna kill people and get in trouble if I play this game." And she's like, "If you get in trouble even once after I get you this game, I'm gonna take it away from you." And I was like, "All right." So I didn't get in trouble, and I got to keep my game.
I remember I got this.
I never did beat it because it's really fucking hard to beat. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's pretty challenging, but I was able to get through it.
Those last missions were tough.
Yeah, they were. I remember once everything starts falling apart when the Yakuza stuff happens, and then it's just like, oh.
That is one game I would like them to eventually remake. I think it'd be really cool if they'd remake Grand Theft Auto 3 story on the modern Grand Theft Auto engines.
I think that would be really cool. I think I would like to see that. Really. Grand Theft Auto Advance actually was pretty good. And I remember Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars was also really good on the mobile platforms.
Gameboy Advance is another story. Yeah, most of the joy from this game comes from the fact I'm gutting people on 2 AA's, but this is a legitimate Grand Theft Auto with not a ton of concessions made. This wouldn't be considered a demake, however, considering it's a completely original entry in the franchise. Now, Pac-Man World, that just got diagnosed. The Game Boy Advance is filled with multi-platform games that were completely different from handheld to console. I was definitely expecting this to be a 2D platformer based on the PS1 game. Was I ever gleefully disappointed? Hey, they took the PS1 game and transformed it into a 2D sprite paradise. Is it better this way? Well, it depends on if you like dog See, this is the biggest issue with Demakes. It feels like you're punching down. Well, the Game Boy Advance version of Super Sponge isn't as good as the PlayStation one. Well, duh. Of course, what makes these games special is seeing how they convert elements that could only be done on the more powerful system. Sometimes they whittle them down to their core. Konami couldn't really port the first Silent Hill to Game Boy Advance, or they could, they just knew it wouldn't be pretty. So they converted it into a visual novel, released only in Japan. See, while I would have loved to try Silent Hill on Game Boy Advance, we know it would have stunk. Sometimes developers have to make these calls. Should they demake the game for lesser hardware or create something more suited for it? Because even if they work on lesser hardware, I think I, alongside many others, care more about seeing it just exist, not necessarily if it's just as good or better than the source material. However, that can happen sometimes. Dark Void was a game, thanks for asking. One of the most forgettable and generic games from the Xbox 360 PS3 era. Done by Capcom, but it was just so lifeless and lame. Just look at this cover. Look at this name. Without the title, would anybody have gone?
Kind of forgot that existed.
That's a Dark Void.
Definitely
it's
forgettable.
Just an underwhelming third-person shooter that completely got overshadowed by its spin-off on Nintendo DSiWare. Everybody has that more successful cousin. Dark Void Zero isn't necessarily a demake, but it has the spirit of one. The concept here is, what if Dark Void wasn't an original game? Turns out it was a reboot or sequel to a lost Capcom NES game. You gotta hand it to them. They truly ran with this idea, even putting a fake history lesson in the electronic manual. Totally giving an excuse as to why it's on a dual-screen handheld, because it was on the PlayChoice 10 dual-screen arcade machine. They even got Jimmy Fallon in on the idea that this was, in fact, originally an NES game. When they break out the talk show host, everybody goes, oh shit. On that day, all late-night Jimmy Fallon viewers bought Dark Void Zero. The game itself actually gives off a lot of 80s Capcom vibes. Comparing it to the real-life Dark Void, it kind of feels like how Bionic Commando on NES compares to Bionic Commando on Xbox 360. 360. What an insult. The NES style is prime for demake territory. It's more impressive to demake for Atari, but demaking a modern game for NES, well, it just might be playable. Namco demade Pac-Man Championship Edition, turning it into something worthy of being on an NES cartridge. It was included in Namco Museum Archives Volume 1, and Jesus Christ, it might just be better than the original. To be fair, the original Pac-Man Championship Edition is good, but its aesthetic reminds me so much of the superior Championship Editions DX and 2 that it's really hard for me to go back to it. Championship Edition on NES...
I've never played a Pac-Man game that looked that good.
Even though it looks ass old. It's so addictive, and I think having this gameplay more zoomed in makes everything feel faster.
I remember I showed my dad this game, and my dad was just like, oh. My dad loved Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man was his game. That and Galaga. My dad played those games to to the point where he would wore calluses onto his hands. But Jesus, I showed him this and he was just like, oh gosh.
It really feels like its own experience, and honestly, if I had to choose between the two versions, I'm going NES. Retro City Rampage originally started development after the remake of Grand Theft Auto. It's a good thing they changed course. While it's obviously inspired by GTA and NES games, the final release is more than that. It's not GTA, and it couldn't run on an NES. But you could still look at it as a spiritual demake. The developer made sure you didn't have to look
There are
hard for the
so
actual
many
one.
Easter eggs in this game, it's kind of crazy.
ROM City Rampage, a version of the game that runs on NES. Plus, they made a version for MS-DOS on a floppy disk. These people scare me.
Oh my god!
They bring games to garbage hardware because... Now, downgraded ports, you could totally consider demakes. Doom on Nintendo Switch? Well, they technically did demake it, but that's not really too fun to discuss. Like, here's Rayman Origins on Xbox 360, now on Wii, now on 3DS. How did they do it? Oh man, they must have found the Gaussian blur effect. But the demaking spirit of going far back is still alive and well. Fans do it all the time. Final Fantasy VII on NES, Super Smash Land on Game Boy, but even Nintendo does it. Their prototype for Breath of the Wild was an NES game. They made Breath of the Wild for NES, and then made Breath of the Wild. Well, this is just a remake. I mean, they're super guilty of demakes in general.
Oh, my brain.
Great Nintendo 3DS Wii U ports of...
Yeah, I vaguely remember hearing about that, but I kind of forgot about it.
I did not know about that. My brain hurts now. I hate that.
Hyrule Warriors Legends. It runs... This is disgusting. I have no idea how anybody played this game legitimately on 3DS. Of course, it runs better on new 3DS models, but so would Molasses. Doesn't make it fast. I don't care. To me, this game just doesn't belong here. This gives off Lion King NES vibes, just a sense of this not belonging. Everything feels off. Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS, I think, feels more justified, and it's still pointless. That's an insult to Mario Maker and an even bigger one to Hyrule Warriors. You can never upload stages with this version. You can only play stages that were uploaded from the Wii U version.
Yeah, that's...
At the very least, if they let you
that's the
transfer
biggest
stages...
downfall of the version for 3DS, is the fact that, again, stripping things away just to make it work.
Made to the Wii U to then upload? No, it'd still be stupid, but at least there would be a way. No, there's no point to any of this, though it's still very charming to see this game run on 3DS. I just love how they had to downgrade New Super Mario Bros. U from the Wii U to this platform when New Super Mario Bros. 2 was on it and looked fine. They could have used these assets. No. It doesn't look not fine enough. The new Super Mario Bros. U art style on 3DS is amazingly pixelated, and it's funny because this is the art style they chose to represent on the box. Well, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World is a great conversion. It looks and plays great, and I find it very charming how they converted the 3D world map into a 2D one. While the 3D map is cooler on the Wii U version, the 2D one on 3DS just flat out makes more sense. This is a 2D platformer after all. Regardless of if these are good versions of the games, demakes are amazing. They may not be more fun to play, they may just be f***ing putrid, but they're just so damn interesting to analyze, every last one of them. To see how a game as massive as Breath of the Wild would work on NES, or just seeing Hyrule Warriors do something it shouldn't, I love seeing games represented in a different way than the norm, and these demakes help you to appreciate the game design. Without all those fancy 3D graphics, most of these games still hold up at their core. In some cases, they can be better not bogged down with cutscenes and loading screens. And it gave us a chance to play Rayman Arena on the PlayStation 1. Yeah, this is weird. So Rayman Rush is a demake of Rayman Arena for PS1. It removes modes and just focuses on this racing game mode. That's it. But even though it released after Arena came out in Europe, it released before Arena did here in North America. So if you live in Ohio, is this a demake or is Rayman Arena a remake? What about Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition? This is a demake of Final Fantasy 15 for mobile phones. It uses a cutesy new art style and is played from a top-down perspective, but follows a shortened take on the same story. But man, they just oversimplified so much here. As a mobile game, it really likes it when you win, and the game just feels kind of mindless to me. At this point, you're better off just watching Final Fantasy 15 cutscenes on your phone. But then the Demake got a remake with Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition HD. You can finally play the Xbox One. Or play Final Fantasy 15, your choice. To be fair, there's merit to both of these
I choose the latter.
I didn't like Final Fantasy 15, so you've got Pocket Edition, but a lot of people don't like Pocket Edition, so it's truly a matter of preference. Except on Nintendo Switch, where this is the only Final Fantasy 15 you've got.
Because who needs bullshit when you have dog shit?
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was also a remake of Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters game, when they released it on Nintendo Wii, when it already had been out on 360 and PlayStation 2. They made the characters look more cartoonish than they did like how they looked in the other game or in the first game.
So most of the demakes I've technically played have probably been Game Boy games.
Yeah, same.
And two of them I actually really enjoyed, and only when I played the original versions did I ever actually three of them technically, because only when I played the original versions did I ever actually prefer one of the original versions over the demakes, which was Dr. Mario, Tetris, and Yoshi's Cookie. And I actually preferred the original Yoshi's Cookie over the demake on the Game Boy.
Yeah.
But Game Boy Tetris, like, for some reason I just really enjoyed. Like, it wasn't as colorful, but it was great. It's fun having it in a portable mode to take around and play, you know? Then there was some other games that I definitely had gotten that were not great on Game Boy. Like, Kirby. Like, the Kirby Game Boy games are not as good as, like, the NES. And
yeah.
Obviously the Super Nintendo when it went to that.
There's a few Kirby games that were on portable platforms, and most of them are not as good. There's a couple, but yeah, for the most part, I prefer the console ones. You know what we really need? A fully 3D Kirby game. A fully 3D one, because I know
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, because I know that people are like, oh, Kirby and the Crystal Shards. No, that's 2.5D. You're not able to like move past the plane that you're on. You can't move towards and away from the screen.
It would have to be done really well. Like,
yeah,
they'd have to nail down making those mechanics feel right for how Kirby works, because he's a floaty character. Mm-hmm. And if you're gonna make it 3D, obviously you're gonna want to throw in probably like some 3D platforming and stuff. But he can kind of float and fly, so like the platforming aspect kind of goes out the window when he can float and fly as well. So you're gonna have to like think of a lot of things to make a 3D version of it as interesting, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get it.
And I'd definitely be interested to play it if it was done well and had enough good ideas in it.
I think Nintendo R&D needs to get on that and let HAL Laboratories help out with the production.
It's like I could imagine like a really cool like boss fight with Meta Knight, sword fight, like if they could do.
Oh, dude, could you imagine like him coming at you and just like slash in the 3D space, and you're just like, and you can like float up to get away from him, and then he can follow you up, dude. I would love that. Ugh. Yeah, I'm looking at the ghost.
I almost imagine it playing kind of like Zone of the Enders, like, that you rotating around each other and slashing the swords at each other and blocking and bouncing off of each other's swords and stuff.
I'd like that. I think that'd be really cool, actually. I think that would be really, really cool. And, God, there's things that could be done that I think would work well with a 3D Kirby game, but again, I guess that's why I'm not a video game developer, is because, well, number one, I just don't think I'd be that talented at it, and number two, it is quite literally, like, you have to figure things out to make it fun, because if it's not fun, no one's going to play it, and if no one's going to play it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's going to do it. That was Scott the Woz, Demakes. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and hopefully we will see you all in the next one. So until then, I'm Nate.
I'm Nick.
We'll see you, everybody. Peace out.